Good morning, Excellencies. Kindly take your seats. Wow. Kindly take your seats so that the meeting could start, please.
See Switzerland in their seats.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, the third meeting of Main Committee 1 of the 2026 Review Conference of the Parties to the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons is called to order. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, yesterday morning, 4th of May 2026, the Secretariat circulated a revised draft program of work for Main Committee 1 and Subsidiary Body 1 contained in NPT/CONF.2026/MC.1/1/rev.1, including the allocation of meetings for Main Committee 1 and Subsidiary Body 1. In addition, a draft indicative timetable for the work of this main committee and its subsidiary body bearing the symbol NPT/CONF.2026/MC.1/INF/2/Rev.1 was circulated. Main Committee 1 will now continue with the general exchange of views. Before we begin, please allow me to again remind you of the time limit for statements during the general exchange of views, which I outlined at both our meetings last week. As was advised by the President of the conference, for the general exchange of views, there will be a timer shown on the screen indicating 1 minute remains for the statement, followed by a strict microphone cutoff once the time limit has been reached. Delegations will recall that the time limit for statements are 8 minutes for group statements and 5 minutes for national statements. Delegations that wish to do so are invited to provide longer versions of their statement to be posted on the website of the review conference. Delegations are kindly asked to provide their statements in advance for the interpretation services. They may do so by sending an electronic copy of their statements to e-statements@un.org and should clearly include the meeting, i.e. NPT Review Conference, Main Committee 1, and delegation name in the subject line. In addition, delegations are kindly requested to email electronic versions of their statements to the Secretariat at npt@un.org as early as possible for posting on the website of the review conference. Finally, delegations are requested to please inform the Secretariat as soon as possible if they wish to exercise their right of reply. Rights of reply will be heard at the beginning of this meeting. At the end of this meeting, I beg your pardon. With that said, I now turn to the list of speakers we have for the general exchange of views. I currently have 25 speakers on my list. The first speaker on my list is the distinguished representative of Switzerland on behalf of Group of States. You have the floor.
Mr. Chair, I'm taking the floor on behalf of 50 states: Austria, Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Belgium, Bulgaria, Canada, Chile, Costa Rica, Cyprus, Czech Republic, Denmark, El Salvador, Estonia, Finland, France, Georgia, Germany, Ghana, Ireland, Italy, Japan, Kazakhstan, Latvia, Liechtenstein, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malta, Mexico, Moldova, Monaco, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Peru, the Philippines, Poland, Portugal, the Republic of Korea, Romania, San Marino, Slovenia, Sweden, Spain, Thailand, Turkey, Ukraine, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and my own country, Switzerland. Mr. Chair, building on the significant work undertaken during this current review cycle, we reaffirm our commitment to advancing risk reduction as an essential complement to, not a substitute for, nuclear disarmament. The current deteriorating security environment demands urgent action in the field of risk reduction. The preamble to the NPT opens with the recognition of the devastation that would be visited upon all mankind by nuclear war and the subsequent need to make every effort to avert the danger of such a war. While nuclear weapon states bear the primary responsibility for preventing nuclear use, all states parties to the NPT share a stake in ensuring that this critical objective is met. The 13 practical steps of 2000 and the 2010 action plan already include measures aimed at reducing the risk of nuclear conflict. And the rich tradition of risk reduction measures, ranging from crisis communication channels, notification mechanisms, doctrinal transparency dialogues, negative security assurances, to formal arms control agreements, has helped prevent nuclear conflicts for decades. These measures must be maintained, and the current level of risk requires that they not only be implemented, but further strengthened and expanded on by the relevant state parties. We welcome the efforts already made in this regard. Enhancing communication, predictability, and stability should be at the center of these efforts. The NPT Review Conference should reaffirm the prevention of nuclear war as a central priority and ensure that its outcome reflects this imperative through concrete, actionable commitments. Our objective is to move from dialogue to action, from proposals to implementation, through the swift development of concrete, credible, and practical measures that reduce the risk of nuclear conflict. Pending the elimination of nuclear weapons, risk reduction goes hand in hand with our unwavering commitment to Article 6 and contributes to its fulfillment. The case for action has never been clearer. We encourage this review conference to give renewed impetus to this urgent matter and stand ready to work with all states parties to find common ground. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank the distinguished representative of Switzerland on behalf of a group of states for their statement. And I now invite the distinguished representative of Kiribati on behalf of Group of States to deliver their statement.
Thank you, Chair. As this is Kiribati's first time taking the floor in Main Committee 1, we extend our congratulations to you, Chair, on your assumption of this important role. On behalf of Austria, Fiji, Kazakhstan, Malta, Marshall Islands, Mexico, Mongolia, New Zealand, Solomon Islands, Thailand, the Philippines, and my own country, Kiribati, I have the honor of delivering this joint statement on the legacy of nuclear weapons. The world is currently facing renewed dangers that nuclear weapons may be used. This stems from the relentless pursuit of the nuclear weapon states in modernizing and expanding their nuclear arsenals, thereby delaying their disarmament commitments under the NPT. Further, embedding nuclear weapons in the security doctrines and policies and increased nuclear rhetoric and a tense geopolitical environment. Chair, at the 1995 Review Conference, the state parties acknowledged the existence of a special responsibility towards those people of former United Nations Trust territories who have been adversely affected as a result of nuclear weapons tests conducted during the period of the trusteeship. Since the 2010 NPT Review Conference, there has been a growing call for the international community to address the legacy of nuclear weapons. At the same review conference, state parties expressed their deep concern about the catastrophic humanitarian consequences of any use of nuclear weapons. In 2017, the UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons was adopted, establishing for the first time a legal regime prohibiting the very existence of nuclear weapons. Another first, the TPNW, contains provisions on victim assistance, environmental remediation, and international cooperation and assistance. These provisions were highlighted in the Vienna Action Plan, adopted at the first meeting of state parties, and subsequent outcome documents adopted at the second and third meetings of state parties as central to the treaty's humanitarian spirit. Since 2023, an overwhelming number of states have voted in favor of successive UNGA resolutions addressing the ongoing legacy of nuclear weapons, and we are pleased that an international meeting on this topic will take place later this year. Chair, we must urgently take action to assist those communities impacted by nuclear weapons and remediate contaminated environments. In support of this, in 2022, the leaders of Pacific Island Forum countries reiterated their strong concerns for the significance of the potential threat of nuclear contamination to the health and security of the Blue Pacific, its peoples and prospects. The leaders of the Pacific Island Forum countries have agreed arrangements for preliminary independent review relating to nuclear contamination issues in the Pacific, focusing on Republic of the Marshall Islands, Kiribati, and French Polynesia. We expect the study to produce interim findings later this year. At this review conference, we are requesting the nuclear weapon states, which conducted tests around the world, to recognize the transboundary and intergenerational effects of nuclear weapons, including the physical, mental, and social trauma caused by nuclear weapons testing. We ask those states to acknowledge their primary responsibility to provide technical and financial assistance to affected state parties, and where possible, to make available all relevant scientific information related to the impacts of their nuclear weapons testing programs. Other state parties in a position to do so should be encouraged to offer financial, technical, and scientific resources to assist those states affected by nuclear weapons testing, especially where those affected states are LDCs. We further call on nuclear weapon states to take immediate practical measures towards complying with their respective obligations under Article 6 of the NPT and to fully implement their agreed disarmament commitments regarding the total elimination of nuclear weapons in a verifiable, transparent, and irreversible manner and within a specific time frame. I thank you.
and international peace and security. We cannot stand idly by in facing these daunting challenges to the very survival of the treaty. We must take decisive actions to reverse the course. To that end, in addition to supporting of a comprehensive convention on nuclear weapons to prohibit their possession, development, production, acquisition, testing, stockpiling, transfer, use, or adopt the policy of the no first use as an interim measure under any and all circumstances. 3, to urge all nuclear weapon states to cease completely and immediately all their nuclear modernizations plan, including upgrading and refurbishing their existing nuclear weapons, as well as developing new types of nuclear weapons. 4, to confirm the continued validity of the unequivocal commitments under 13 practical steps and the 2010 Action Plan on Nuclear Disarmament until all their objectives are achieved. 5, to invite the state parties to further mobilize the international efforts toward nuclear disarmament, particularly through the best use of the opportunity of the General Assembly's high-level annual meeting on the International Day for Total Elimination of Nuclear Weapons. 6, to reaffirm that pending the total elimination of nuclear weapons, as the only absolute guarantee against their use, all non-nuclear weapon states have a legitimate right to receive effective, universal, unconditional, non-discriminatory, and irrevocable legally binding security assurances from all nuclear weapon states against the use or threat of use of nuclear weapons under any and all circumstances.
I thank the distinguished representative of Iran for the statement, and now invite the distinguished representative of Kiribati to deliver their statement. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Throughout this review cycle, Kiribati has consistently raised the need for the international community to address the situation of affected communities as an integral extension of Article 6 commitments. This is why we're championing nuclear justice with our good friend Kazakhstan in both the NPT regime, the United Nations General Assembly, and within the framework of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. Mr. Chair, I wish to recall that between 1957 and 1962, 33 nuclear tests were conducted on Christmas Island, where approximately 500 of our citizens were present during the testing period, received little protection and inadequate warning. These events left a lasting imprint on our people and environment, the effects of which continue to be felt across generations. This history is central to our understanding of the humanitarian consequences of nuclear weapons. In this context, Kiribati stresses the importance of full disclosure by user states of information relating to contaminated and affected areas. Such transparency is essential to understanding the full extent of environmental and human impacts. It is also a necessary foundation for informed decision-making and responsible international cooperation. Our intention is clear: to ensure that Christmas Island is fully positioned as a national development priority. Strategically located along emerging trans-Pacific routes, the island holds a significant potential to enhance regional connectivity, including logistics and air and marine linkages, and to support sustainable economic cooperation across the Central Pacific. This ambition requires a comprehensive understanding of environmental conditions as well as appropriate measures for redress and compensation where warranted. These elements are essential to inform effective remediation. In this connection, Kiribati calls on state parties to support the inclusion of victim assistance and environmental remediation in the report of Main Committee 1. Kiribati underscores that progress on nuclear disarmament under Article 6 remains insufficient. We therefore call for concrete, measurable, and time-bound steps toward the reduction and eventual elimination of nuclear arsenals. Strengthen transparency and accountability are essential
their statement.
Mr. Chair, I congratulate you for your appointment and I wish you success in your endeavor. Disarmament, non-proliferation, and peaceful uses of nuclear energy. Greece shares the objective of a world free of nuclear weapons as an indispensable step towards achieving general and complete disarmament. Transparency, verifiability, and irreversibility are three core principles that should underpin the disarmament process. Therefore, my country subscribes the joint statement delivered previously by Norway. In particular, we echo the recommendation to the review conference to reaffirm the importance of all states applying the principles of transparency, verifiability, and irreversibility in relation to the implementation of the Article 6, including through refraining from increasing the number of nuclear weapons, further reductions to their nuclear arsenals, and reducing the role of nuclear weapons in security doctrines. Greece took note of the expiry of the New START Treaty and calls the interested parties to engage into dialogue towards a new agreement on a legally binding framework limiting the largest nuclear arsenals. In this vein, we'll welcome the United States' call for multilateral strategic stability talks, and we hope that other nuclear weapon states will engage constructively to dialogue. We also repeat our condemnation of Russia's unprovoked and unjustifiable war of aggression against Ukraine and its irresponsible nuclear and early entry into force of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. Therefore, my country calls upon all states that have not yet done so, in particular those listed in Annex 2, to sign and ratify the CTBT without further delay. Also, Greece calls for the early commencement and conclusion of negotiations in the Conference of Disarmament of a fissile We stand ready to continue supporting the international efforts towards achieving nuclear disarmament, including within this committee. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Greece for the statement, and now invite the distinguished representative of Ghana to deliver their statement.
Ghana congratulates you on your assumption of the role of Chair of Main Committee 1, Disarmament Pillar. You have our full support and cooperation in guiding our work. Ghana aligns itself with the statement delivered by the African Group and Non-Aligned Movement and reaffirm its commitment to the full and balanced implementation of the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. My delegation would like to make the following statement in our national capacity. Nuclear disarmament remains a key priority of the treaty and the central test of its credibility. The NPT cannot endure as a sustainable bargain if obligations on non-proliferation are rigorously enforced, while disarmament commitment under Article 6 remain indefinitely deferred. At a time of growing geopolitical tension, nuclear arsenals are being modernized, strategic trust is diminishing, and long-standing arms control arrangements continue to erode without credible replacement. Dangerous rhetoric regarding the possible use of nuclear weapons has re-emerged, increasing the risk of miscalculation extension of the NPT in 1995 was accompanied by clear political commitment towards disarmament. Those commitments reaffirmed in 2000 and 2010 remain valid and must be fully implemented. Ghana therefore wishes to underscore three urgent priorities. 1, nuclear weapon states must reaffirm their unequivocal undertaking to eliminate their nuclear arsenals and translate the commitment into concrete, measurable terms delivery system, fissile materials for military purposes, and efforts to reduce the role of nuclear weapons in nuclear security doctrines. 2, pending total elimination, urgent measures are needed to reduce or threat of use of nuclear weapons under any circumstances. We also urge nuclear weapon states to adopt no first use policies as an important interim step. Such measures help reduce immediate risks, but they cannot substitute for the complete on the global norm against nuclear testing must be preserved and strengthened. On the 13th anniversary of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Boundary Treaty, Ghana calls for its universalization and early entry into force. Any return to nuclear testing will constitute a grave setback for international peace and security and for the multilateral disarmament framework. Mr. Chair, the use of threats or use of nuclear weapons remains fundamentally inconsistent with the purpose and principles of the Charter of the UN and international humanitarian law. Their total elimination remains the only absolute guarantee against their use. The NPT remains the cornerstone of a global nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation regime. Its continued legitimacy depends on balanced implementation of all 3 pillars and renewed political will, particularly by nuclear weapon states, to fulfill their obligation in good faith. In conclusion, Mr. Chair, Ghana calls on all state parties to use this review conference not merely to repeat established commitments, but to restore trust and take irreversible steps toward the achievement of a world free of nuclear weapons. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Ghana for their statement. And I now invite the distinguished representative of Peru to deliver their statement. You have the floor.
Peru would like to congratulate you for your election as chair of this committee, and we thank you for leading our work. We reaffirm our full commitment to the success of this review conference. We come to this main committee number 1 with a sense of urgency, and we note that of the 3 pillars of the treaty, the nuclear disarmament pillar registers the most concerning performance. The world is experiencing a particularly complex moment for international peace and security. The erosion of trust among states, the deterioration of the strategic context, and the resurgence of nuclear confrontation narratives test the international non-proliferation and disarmament regime. Over half a century after the entry into force of the NPT, the obligation enshrined in Article 6 still has not been fully realized. Despite our commitments, the goal of ending the nuclear arms race and advancing toward disarmament continues to be beyond our reach. This situation merits a renewed attention on behalf of the international community, and especially in this complex global moment. There are still thousands of nuclear warheads. The modernization on a qualitative and quantitative basis of arsenals continued, and in some cases with insufficient levels of transparency. We also international norms and heighten the risks for humanity. To this, we can add the expiration last February of the New START Treaty, the last bilateral instrument that reduced the two largest categories as a Latin American state, which is part of the Tlatelolco Treaty. We come from a region that decided to build its security upon legal trust and cooperation and not upon nuclear threats. As a state party of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, we also affirm that the doctrine of deterrence does not offer a sustainable that cannot be delayed. Therefore, Peru would like to reiterate its proposal as expressed in the PrepCom of 2025 for this conference to agree upon a new set of principles and objectives for nuclear disarmament. They should be updated and geared toward implementation, and they should include a strategic dialogue on security and stability. This task should be inspired on consensus-based progress, specifically the 13 practical steps of the year 2000 and action number Bible periodic reporting. It should also include irreversible and verifiable measures to reduce arsenals, preserving the moratorium on nuclear testing and the swift entry into force of the CTBT, as well as effective multilateral negotiations and legally binding security assurances for non-nuclear weapon states. Although they do not substitute nuclear disarmament, we also rotundly support measures to reduce nuclear risk.
The distinguished representative of Peru for their statement, and I now invite the distinguished representative of the United Arab Emirates to deliver their statement. You have the floor.
Mr. Chair, at the outset, we would like to congratulate you on assuming the chairmanship of the work of the main committee, and we associate ourselves to the Arab Group statement. Mr. Chair, the United Arab Emirates attaches great importance to the NPT, since it is the main pillar for the global regime on non-proliferation and disarmament. This treaty, over decades, promoted peace, international peace and stability. It curbed also strategic and non-strategic deployed and non-deployed nuclear weapons by all nuclear weapon states so that we can ensure total elimination. In this vein, the UAE stresses the importance of the full implementation of the 2010 action plan. We urge all nuclear weapon states, as well as other countries who possess such weapons, to take practical and concrete steps to reduce their nuclear arsenals, regardless of the type, quantity, or size of such weapons. We call upon those countries to refrain from any measures that all. Those efforts must be accompanied by reducing the role of nuclear weapons in defense doctrines and security strategies. We have to promote measures to reduce the threat of nuclear weapons, including preparedness and increasing the time to take decisions and promoting communication and enhancing crisis management measures. For this would reduce the accidental or targeted use of such weapons. Transparency is an important element pursuant to Article 6 of the treaty. It is also vital nuclear disarmament. Mr. Chair, Iran must not promote, modernize, or possess any nuclear weapons. The IAEA has stressed that Iran's consecutive failure to meet its obligations on safeguards is paramount to the non-compliance to its obligations according to the NPT. The continued efforts of Iran in this vein will not be in the interest of this nuclear disarmament. Their actions lead to the destabilization of the region, and ballistic missiles and drones against my country. This is a dangerous escalation and a direct threat to the peace and stability and territorial integrity of our country, which runs counter to international law and the UN Charter. Thus, Iran must immediately and fully address all areas of non-compliance. They must cooperate with the IAEA without any delay or conditions to address all matters unresolved. We attach great importance to the CTBT. We stress that the entry into force of this treaty is of vital importance. We urge all countries who have not yet signed in the NPT. It will maintain its credibility and drive the international community to reach their common goal for a world more secure, free from weapons of mass destruction. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank the distinguished representative of the United Arab Emirates for their statement. I now invite the distinguished representative of Senegal to deliver their statement.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chair, allow me first on behalf of the Senegalese delegation to sincerely congratulate you for your election to the chairmanship of this committee. You can count on our full cooperation and support to your work. My delegation subscribes to the statement of Nigeria on behalf of the African Group and Indonesia on behalf of NAM, which reflect our priorities and the priorities of all non-nuclear weapon states. My delegation several regions of the world, blockages in disarmament mechanisms and the crisis of confidence among states, geopolitical tensions, and the expiration of the New START Treaty, as well as the review of security doctrines and the emergence of new threats, point to the importance of strengthening the NPT, which is the cornerstone of our efforts. This is why Senegal, like the rest of the international community, is worried that the NPT, which is the main framework that we've had for the last 50 years, is going through one of the most challenging periods of its history. 2 consecutive review conferences in 2015 and 2022 failed to produce a consensus-based outcome document. And since then, the situation has worsened. Therefore, our work is especially important to renew our faith in disarmament. Mr. Chair, for our delegation, there are three factors that are very important to this main committee in our conference. First, renewing commitments to Article 6 of the treaty, which commits nuclear weapon states to negotiate towards full nuclear disarmament. My delegation would like to recall that the implementation of Article 6 of the treaty is a legally binding obligation, not a political commitment that is variable. No context nor contest among states absolves states of their moral, legal, and ethical responsibility to completely abolish nuclear arsenals. It is important to apply the action plan of 2010 and force nuclear weapon states to respect their obligations and to work to profoundly reduce in an irreversible manner nuclear arsenals. This within a legally binding time frame and with a of these weapons. And these imperatives are extremely important. Senegal believes that our progress should be advanced in a structured framework with transparency, verification for nuclear weapon states based on IAEA assurances, and the entry into force of the TPNW and the adoption of a universal instrument on negative security assurances, as well as universalizing nuclear weapons free zones and solid are part of solid guarantees for total nuclear disarmament. And with respect of a possible third failure, we need to jump forward towards productive deliberations. We must make progress on substantive issues, especially with regards to consolidating our disarmament and non-proliferation architecture, measures to strengthen confidence, negative security assurances, or even the FMCT. Given the urgency of the moment, the Senegalese delegation would like a more targeted conversation about minimal concessions that parties will make, and these concessions should not be seen as us renouncing to the commitments of the NPT, but rather a way of adopting and we are engaging in this work convinced of it and convinced of the importance of this moment as a watershed moment for us. The populations that we represent expect from us not new statements, but rather concrete and sustainable results. And Senegal will participate and be a constructive partner in this endeavor. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Senegal for the statement. And I invite the distinguished representative of
extend its full support and cooperation throughout the work of this conference. We meet at a time of profound uncertainty. Nuclear arsenals continue to modernize. The bilateral arms control framework has weakened following the expiration of the New START treaty without a successor, and the broader disarmament architecture is under increasing strain. In this context, the full implementation of Article 6 of the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons is more urgent than ever. The Kyrgyz Republic calls upon all nuclear weapon states to demonstrate the political will necessary to take concrete, verifiable, and irreversible steps toward the total elimination of their nuclear arsenals in accordance with their legal obligation. Mr. Chair, today's security environment Pending the total elimination of nuclear weapons, nuclear-armed states must maintain full human control and oversight over command, control, and communication of their nuclear weapons and delivery system. Those developments underline the urgent need to restore dialogue, reduce strategic risks, and reaffirm that the nuclear war must never be fought. At the same time, the legitimate concern all their nuclear facilities under comprehensive AIEA safeguards. We express deep concern over the absence of a legally binding framework governing the world free of nuclear weapons. We believe this instrument contributes to strengthening the global norm against nuclear weapons and to mobilizing international efforts toward their elimination. Mr. Chair, sustainable progress in disarmament requires not only political commitment, but also an informed and engaged global public, particularly young people. Initiated the establishment of March 5th the International Day for Disarmament, Non-Proliferation Awareness through General Assembly Resolution 77/51. We encourage calls on all delegations to engage constructively in a good faith, advancing nuclear disarmament serves the interest of all. We support the adoption of a balanced and consensus-based final document that strengthens all three pillars of the treaty. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank the distinguished representative of Kyrgyzstan for their statement. Excellencies, may I remind delegations that in accordance with Rule 19, that this statement should be as brief as possible. The conference, speaking limits will be strictly enforced for rights of reply. A timer will show on the screen indicating when there is 1 minute remaining.
respond to the allegations leveled regarding the consequences of nuclear tests. Ratified the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. France is unswervingly committed to the treaty's entry into force and its universalization. Furthermore, France is the only nuclear weapons state which has dismantled its nuclear test site, the Pacific Test as well as in French Polynesia between 1966 and 1996. France has always handled the issue of the impact of the aforementioned tests with the greatest seriousness and the utmost respect. A number is ensured by the French authorities, covering the radiological and the geomechanical aspects. The outcomes are communicated on an annual basis in reports that are made within its power to ensure that the compensation regime extends to all eligible persons in keeping with the aforementioned law. It is also
representative of Iran, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At the outset, I would like to underscore that the representative of the United Arab Emirates appeals fall short of the professional standards expected in this forum. Accordingly, my delegation does not consider them to warrant a response. Mr. Chair, they remain silent on the unlawful uses of force by the United States and the Israeli regime against Iran and its peaceful nuclear facilities. Instead, these same delegations seek to justify horizontal proliferation and are incompatible with both the letter and the spirit of the treaty. First, paragraph 3 of the preamble explicitly recognizes that the proliferation of nuclear weapons are effective measures to halt the spread of nuclear weapons. Nuclear sharing arrangements run counter to this objective and undermine the credibility of non-proliferation commitments. as well as the training of their personnel in nuclear delivery missions. Such practices directly breach the prohibition on transfer of custody and control, particularly in during specific phases of potential operations, elements of control could pass to such personnel, an outcome fundamentally in violation of the treaty's core prohibitions. Fourth, the claim that nuclear sharing arrangements predate the treaty and were not objected to at the time of its negotiation does not establish their legal
distinguished representative of Iran for their intervention. I now invite the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation to make their intervention.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We would like to respond to the allegations that we heard in this chamber regarding the position of the Russian Federation regarding the CTBT. We'd like to note that the collective West allegations leveled at the Russian Federation linked to the decision to withdraw are beyond criticism. They show that these Western countries hold in contempt the non-proliferation regime underpinned by the NPT. Once again, we must remind you that it is destructive, the destructive position of the United States regarding the CTBT, which was crafted back in 1999 when Congress decided not to ratify the agreement. And then in 2018, it was taken up a notch when in the newest US nuclear doctrine, there was a provision regarding its rejection of the CTBT and information about the fact that this agreement was not in furtherance of the US's interests. This is the very reason why we're facing this particular deplorable situation regarding the entry into force of the CTBT. All European countries leveling allegations against Russia regarding the withdrawal of the ratification are states which ratified the agreement. So it would appear that they feel that they are within their right to criticize Russia. However, these countries have forgotten that for a very long time, they turned a blind eye to the unacceptable behavior of the US vis-a-vis the agreement. They did not take any steps that could have facilitated on this front. Quite the contrary, it is the passivity of European states that actually promoted the US's position vis-a-vis the agreement. In light of the current political situation we face, our country deemed it unacceptable this imbalanced approach to the CTBT between Russia and Washington. Washington, which is pursuing an anti-Russian paradigm, which We have all of the rights stemming therefrom, as well as the obligations. We continue to fully participate in the work of the PrepCom of the CTBTO. We continue to uphold the nuclear test ban moratorium, which was introduced by a decree of the Russian president back in 1992. Let us remind you that a very clear-cut example of our commitment to the CTBT is the fact that in December of 2023, we completed the construction of our segment of the International Monitoring System, which is a key component of the treaty's verification mechanism. As for the fallacious interpretation of the statement by the Russian leadership about the potential resumption of nuclear tests, this does not hold water. The Russian president, Mr. Putin, clearly stated that such a step would only be taken in response to such a resumption by the United States. I thank you for your kind attention.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation for their intervention. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, that was the last speaker on my list. And per our work schedule, our next meeting is tomorrow, 6th of May at 10 a.m. in Conference Room 1, where we will have the first meeting of Subsidiary Body 1, which will examine the implementation of Article 6, nuclear disarmament and measures to avert the danger of nuclear war. Ordinarily, we had indicated from the outset that this meeting will be on rolling basis. But given that we now have a little over 40 minutes to conclude our session, the fact that we need to get the conference room set for the subsidiary body 1 meeting to start, which will take a bit of time. Tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., where we'll begin extensive discussions on subsidiary body 1. I do recognize that the guiding questions were shared just about an hour prior to the start of our meeting today. And so if we are to proceed with subsidiary body 1 meeting now, it might not give delegations ample time to engage in effective discussion. So again, I propose that we adjourn this meeting and reconvene tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. in Conference Room 1 to begin discussions at the subsidiary body 1. And engagement in this morning's session, and this meeting is adjourned.